Well, hey everybody, great to be able to be outside and just hear the activity going on as spring is coming. Today is day 17, I think 16. And we're in that second part of John chapter 7. And John kind of gives us in this a behind the scenes of what was happening as Jesus's popularity was growing. And once again, people had varying opinions. They were confused because so much of his ministry had come from Galilee. He had grown up in Nazareth. Some didn't know about his birth in Bethlehem to Joseph and Mary, where Joseph had to return for the census. And so it's kind of interesting to hear, in John's gospel, he doesn't give us the birth narrative of the manger, the angels, all of that. But we have this point in John chapter 7 where he kind of references the expectation of people that the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem, and because he's a descendant of David's lineage. And it's fascinating to me, in that world, why, if you knew the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem, wouldn't you have like an outpost there, like inspecting every baby that's born, every kid that's raised in Bethlehem, so that you'd be alerted as soon as something took place. But then I think it's interesting, this behind the scenes, you could ask, well, how would John know these behind the scenes conversations? And it's at that tail end of chapter 7 where the name Nicodemus comes up again. I shared, a week or so ago that interaction Jesus has with Nicodemus to me is one of my absolute favorites, because here's somebody who's highly educated, who comes from that world as a religious leader, but he's got humility and he's hungry for what God is doing, even though he recognizes sometimes God does things outside the norm. Now, God never does anything contrary to his character, but he does often do things nobody would expect. And you can just find those all throughout Scripture. Like, right, Joseph, in the end of the book of Genesis, he is sold into slavery by his brothers, and then he is wrongfully accused and put in prison for over a decade, until all of a sudden you think, like, this guy's completely outside of the realm of where God could use him, and that it's exactly where God can use him. And he interprets the dream of the Pharaoh, and he's elevated to second in command over all of Egypt. And then when, right before a famine hits, he's able to bring his whole family, have a reconciliation with his brothers, bring the nation of Israel into Egypt, into the land of Goshen, and provide for them Egypt's grain supply for the sake of the future of God's children. I mean, just a powerful story of the most unlikely thing. David is the most unlikely person to bring down Goliath. He's not even a soldier on the battlefield. He's delivering cheese to his brothers. And yet he's the one that has faith, and he is offended at Goliath's audacity to challenge the God of Israel. And he's mystified. He's like, why is nobody stepping forward to defend the honor of the one true God? And David does, and he brings him down. And from that point forward, I mean, it's just kind of an ascent in David's life. But he's the most unlikely guy to do that in the natural, from the human perspective. And so Nicodemus understands that God sometimes does things outside the realm of what's predictable. And he's got enough humility. And in this moment, he speaks up behind the scenes with the religious dignitaries around his own convictions, and he challenges their system, because what he hears them talking about must have broken his heart, because they're thinking about arresting and hurting this guy, Jesus, who's claiming to be sent from God. And Nicodemus speaks up and says, well, shouldn't someone, if we bring him in, shouldn't he be under trial before he's, flogged, or before he's condemned? And you could tell immediately, right after that, John writes that it broke up. The meeting broke up. They were challenged with the direction they were going. And it doesn't change the direction they were going. Their hearts were hard. They were selfish. But Nicodemus had courage to speak up for what was right, even though it was uncomfortable and it was risky. That's my takeaway today. Do I have that kind of composure and relationship before God, that in my own personal life, will I fall into peer pressure and give in to compromises, or will I stand for what's true, for the life God calls me to live? Love to tell you on this video that I have 100% knocked that ball out of the park, but that's not true. I've fallen short, and probably will again, to not stand up and speak for what's true. And that's why God's grace is so incredibly remarkable, because we don't deserve it, and yet he continues to pour it out for us. Hey, enjoy the tail end of the week, and hope you have an awesome weekend coming up. Look forward to being with you Sunday as we just continue this journey through the Gospel of John. I hope you're finding it as rich and impactful and nurturing in your faith as I am. See ya.